and welcome to Awakening Through Love, the podcast. My name's Rod Gordon.
And my name's Martina Hughes. And today, what we're going to explore is an element that often comes up in relationship work, and that is the tendency for women to be more love driven and the tendency for men to be more purpose driven. So I find this is a fun topic because often when we talk with couples about it, I see the little light bulbs go off like, that's why I'm like that. That's why he's like that. So it's often like a really enlightening and supportive topic for couples.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, the first thing I want to say is that we all have both.
Yes.
So both men and women and even non-gendered people will resonate with all of this.
Yes.
And there's one that will sit more deeply to the truth of our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, too, also, it can actually be covered up.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah, by lots of protection, which forms in different ways from when we're a child, but there's also an alpha or masculine protection. There's also an omega or feminine protection that forms over the heart, which inhibits our capacity for love to give and receive.
Yeah, that actually, like, it touches something for me personally, even hearing you say that the part of me that when I was young was so like career and purpose driven of like, I want to climb this corporate ladder and I want to do this and I want to do that. And I didn't care about men. I didn't care about relationships. But all of that was protection and a shell and not the truth of my heart. Because what I know now is that love does fuel me. It's the thing that is at the heart of everything I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And the trick with all of this, that I think the most challenging part for people is that at the time it feels authentic. It feels real. But it's only after years of abuse and neglect that something else reveals itself.
Yeah.
At some point, it all gets too much.
Yes, absolutely. So let's dive in then. This love driven, what does that mean to be love driven? Or maybe I should speak to that. Maybe I'll speak to that. So
you go for it,
sweet. For people who are love driven, there's a tendency to filter the world through the lens of love. Am I being loved? Does he love me? Is there love here? How can I show more love? How can I be more loving? I wonder, how he's going to love me. There's a tendency to filter everything through the lens of love. Tendency also to be drawn to romance movies, romance novels. I remember as a teenager, like, all of my conversations with girlfriends were about relationships, were about, whether it was our parents' relationships or whether it was boys that we liked or, other people's relationships. All of our conversations were around relationships and love and wanting to kind of understand, like, what makes that whole thing work, what makes that come alive. So yeah, that love driven element is like this endless curiosity, but also desire to be immersed in the world of love and relationships and experience connection and safety in that too.
Yeah, and I think that's another way that it shows up there, I think, because not everyone will probably resonate with the term love, because for some people that's only for their intimate partner. But the desire to connect is another way of expressing love. And so the desire to connect with friends, the desire to connect with people, to connect with pets, like, even I see it play out in some interesting ways in relationships. So I was talking to someone the other day and they were sharing about, they're looking to move in together. And so, the evolution of the relationship, they're together, they're in a committed relationship. And then this desire emerges, but I want to move in together. So the desire to be closer, the desire to connect, it's that love driven part.
Mm.
And then his partner wants more, wants to share finances. So it's like, want to connect more, spend more time with the kids. So there's always this drive towards connection, anything that brings people closer. And I know, like, I'll speak to the man's point of view in a second because I think it's funny. But we can see it play out in all the ways, that all the desires, the desire to connect, the desire to connect with friends, you know, to have social interactions, to be together.
Yeah.
And there's also a sense within that it's never enough.
Yeah.
There's always a desire for more. And I think one of the key things is in understanding this, is to learn to have equanimity with it. Because in the deepest truth, that will never be satiated. That will never be touched in a way that the irritation of that longing, yearning, desire to connect will ever relax or release in any way. It won't go away.
Yeah.
It'll always be there. So it is really valuable to, especially for a feminine driven person or an amiga hearted person, to follow that impulse and to honor it, as well as hold it loosely, have equanimity with it, allow it to also not happen, and enjoy the longing and the yearning that builds from that. So to learn to dance with both sides, to actually enjoy the ache,
Yes.
enjoy the longing, to connect, because in lots of ways that's the most intoxicating piece. In some ways, the actual, like for me, the actual connection doesn't feel as good in some ways as the longing itself. But to be in that longing state, so much energy, there's such an intensity to it. I find that really hard to be with.
And the longing is something that is, it's beautiful and it's intense and it's excruciating, and so there can be that jumping off of it. So learning to be with that is such a powerful medicine.
Yeah.
As well as the other medicine that I work a lot within myself and with clients is to remember that I am love. I am the source of love. So if I'm projecting that love has to come from you or from somewhere else, then I'm disconnecting from the love that I am. So if I find that I've gotten myself lost in chasing love, I always come back to, oh, I'm the source of love. Like, I am love here. What can I do to be with love in my own body?
Yeah, and I think the seeking of love, just the act of that in itself implies that love's not present. It's not here, it's not now, it's not available. And if that's the experience, then the seeking gets intensified. And in my experience, and I don't know for people listening, but if you know people that are constantly seeking love from you, grabbing, seeking, wanting, tends to push, I know for me, tends to push me away.
Yeah.
It's like, this needy demand hurts. Yeah. And so, and it's not easy to recognize or find the love within ourselves. So can you speak to that a little bit? You mentioned that you were the source of love, but how do people relate to that information? How can they understand that in their body?
Yeah, sure. Great question. For me, it's coming back to my practices. So I might go and sit and be present with my feelings. And then as I go inside, it might be like, oh, feeling a little needy, feeling the part of me that is grabbing or pulling for love. I can feel, oh, what's underneath that? Oh, I'm sad, I'm hurting. Oh, maybe there's some words that I didn't speak, some feelings I didn't allow. And so then I may journal that, I may take it into a movement practice. And so by accepting and allowing any feelings that are there, and then letting my body open with those feelings and experiences moving through me, there's then like, even if it's sadness that comes up or anger that comes up, then underneath it'll be like, oh, and there's the love. Like, there I am. As soon as I accept the thing I wasn't accepting or wasn't allowing space for, it's like I'll reconnect with the love underneath. And then there'll be space for that to move through my body. So there's a variety of different ways that I'll nourish myself. Sometimes it might be a bath, might be a gentle walk on the beach. It might be journaling and movement. It might be sitting in the sun and doing something quietly, but it's just coming back to allow, to accept, to feel, and to allow the unfolding in myself rather than imagining that has to come from somewhere else. Because I know as soon as I reconnect with that love inside of myself, all of a sudden you're like, suddenly you're there and you're closer to me and you're more available. So it's like, by me taking care of myself rather than demanding it of you, it shifts our dynamic. But it's by me remembering the love that I am that happens.
Yeah. And I think just, and you've shared this in what you've said, and another way of saying it is that any unfelt feelings in the body are a hindrance to the flow of love. So if there's something, and I might not even be aware of what it is that I'm not feeling. So, the other day for me, helplessness was coming up, and I wasn't allowing myself to feel it. And so, as I sat with that and I just allowed myself to feel completely helpless, then once I did that, once the feeling, by allowing my nervous system to metabolize the feeling of helplessness, because it's my nervous system that needs to process the emotion, not my mind or my awareness or whatever. So I allow my nervous system to regulate to the discomfort of feeling helpless. Then the feeling shifts, because feelings want to move. They don't really want to stay still or locked in the body. Once that moved, then I could feel love come available in my body and just coming back to like a sense of home or homeostasis or wholeness in some way. So the part of the liberation of love in the body is to feel the feelings that we actually haven't felt. So if there's an absence of love flow in the relationship or in my body or something like that, that lets me know there's something here that I haven't felt yet. There's more for me to feel, to open up the pathways in my body. Because if I'm not feeling it, it's not because you're not doing something. I'm not feeling. It's in the question. I'm not feeling love. Okay. Well, then I better do something about that, because feelings exist in my body. I can't, feel the feelings in your body. That's not what's happening in that moment. That's not 100% true, but in terms of being able to feel in your body, but in that moment, that feeling, that limitation, me not feeling love, actually exists in my body.
Yeah. And because each person can only be responsible for their own experience. So trying to get love from somebody else is always a losing game, whereas changing our own experience is something that's possible.
Yeah. And I think like on a practical level, because not everyone's going to have a daily practice where they feel their feelings. I think when love feels absent, either in the relationship or with friendships or in life in general, is to find ways to behave in a loving way towards others. Because when like if I see a person struggling in the street with something, and I see that struggle, I see that suffering or challenge or whatever it is. If I go up and meet that and offer support because I have a skill in that particular area or something, there's an offering of love in that moment. And in the offering of love and support, that gifting that to someone, I become the offering of love. So love's moving through my body and in my body, how I experience it when I offer love to other people, and like as in not sexually, as in through acts of generosity and kindness, just for clarity.
This doesn't feel like an awkward moment at all.
I love awkward moments. How cool is it to feel uncomfortable?
It's so hilarious.
So my attention's wide when I said that. I'm like, oh, there's so many things that can mean right now. So when I offer love to someone through an act of generosity or kindness or gifting that to people, as that offering of love moves through my body, it's like the way I describe it, how it feels is it's like my body gets filled up with love so it can pass through me towards the other. And it's that feels more loving to me than actually receiving. It's often for me harder to receive the love. I know that's my practice. I can see you smiling. Than it is to offer it. But also in that moment of becoming love, I'm completely full. I have more energy, more sense of life. I have more to offer in that moment, which means any connection that I create with you or anyone else immediately goes deeper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's a rich beauty in that. So if love is absent and connection is absent, it informs me that I'm not offering that. I'm not offering connection. I'm not offering love because it's not available in my life. I'm not feeling it in my body. I'm wanting it from somebody else. For me, in my own solo practice, that informs me that that's what I'm not doing.
Yeah, just it reminds me. I sent a gift to a friend recently who was having a hard time, and just even the act of purchasing the gift online and organizing for it to be sent was just like felt so good to do. It was kind of like, so nice to do that. And
the heart's full.
And yeah, my heart felt full. And then I had that anticipation of like, I wonder how many days before she receives it, So even that was part of the experience of love and giving love. And yeah, then of course receiving her beautiful response. But it was even less about the response and more about the act of making that happen.
Yeah, and it's a really practical way that anybody can access more love in their life.
Yeah.
But not in time and not with, therapy or practice or anything. It's like right now in this moment, I can have more love in my life.
Absolutely.
By becoming that gift towards another.
Yeah. And there's also really, really simple solo things that people can do as well. One of the things I used to do when I was single and before I had cats, because cats and vases don't work so well. But when I was single and before cats, I would buy myself flowers.
Cat vases and Hades don't match.
Yes, true. Hades is our cat for anyone who, or one of our two cats for anyone who doesn't know. He likes to knock things over, push things off benches, pull flowers out of vases.
Loves to get his paws and slide when we're not home, of course, because we don't let him on the kitchen bench. But if you leave a glass on the kitchen bench, when you come home, it will be smashed on the floor because he'll get there with his paw, push it, and it moves. He gets so excited. Push it again, push it again, push it again, smash. And then he just sits there and looks at it. Like, oh, what I did.
But yes, so before Hades, I used to buy myself flowers as an act of love. And I remember in the beginning feeling like awkward and indulgent, but then going like, feels so good and so loving to do something really simple and beautiful for myself. So it could be things like, showing yourself love by pouring a beautiful bath, buying some flowers, going to a park you love and having a picnic, like doing things that feel loving that you might wish or long for somebody else, but actually just making that choice to give to yourself as well.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of permission for that,
Mm,
but it is actually an incredibly rich experience.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. Mm.
Mm.
So,
You want to talk about the man's one?
I want to talk about purpose, but do you have more to say about love?
In terms of love connection and being a
Mm,
love driven being,
mm,
I think we've touched a lot of different
mm,
things. There's so much that we can
mm.
say about it, but at the same time, I don't want to overcook it.
Yeah, actually, I do remember something else from my own personal journey. When I look at the layers of protection I cultivated around being career or purpose driven, there was always this sense of I felt so helpless and so powerless when it came to love and relationships. And I felt really out of control because I had a sense of failing in that area of my life, but I could also feel how incredibly vulnerable I was in the face of love and relationships. And so career always felt like it was an area where I was in control. I could make choices and make things happen. Like, I want a promotion. I want to work at a bigger company. I want to go work overseas. I want this level of income. I want this to happen. Like, whatever I set my mind to with my career, there was a sense of being able to make it happen. And
Try doing that in a relationship.
exactly. We're just doing thumbs up everywhere because I had a thumb in the air. But yeah, so career, there was a sense of being in control, being competent, being confident. Whereas relationships, I always felt so vulnerable, insecure, uncertain, helpless, and powerless. So it was very easy to place all of my attention on the thing that like felt good or easy or natural and just go, I don't even know what to do with that because I'm not good at it. And it feels so terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, but it speaks to something that sort of sits hidden in our culture. In that, like, to be an accountant that you were at the time, you went to university for 4 years.
Yeah.
And you practiced, then you did courses and you trained and
Yeah.
did whatever you did, right? And then you went to work, what, 5 days a week?
Yeah.
How many hours?
8 to 9 hours a day.
8 to 9. So what's 5 8 to what, 40?
Yep.
So after 4 years of studying at school, you practiced it 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you wondering why you were good at it? But we do that, like, since we're really young, we get sent to school to learn and practice. We decide what we want to do, and then we go and train, whether it's through an apprenticeship or through university or some kind of tertiary study. Then we go into a job and we begin and we practice and we start at the ground level, wherever that is, and then we start to build our way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of hours.
That's a lot of hours. Yeah. Where in our culture do we get taught how to relate? Where do we get taught how to have intimate relationship? The only place we see it is watching our parents.
Yes.
I don't know about the people listening or for you, but in my opinion, that is not been the best place to learn.
Totally.
Because nobody taught them.
Yeah.
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 And so there's nobody out there well, obviously we teach people.
Yes.
But there's, other than, some teachers out there, but there isn't people teaching the art of intimate relating and how to live that in a way that allows both people to thrive.
Absolutely. And I can feel how even some of my vulnerability and powerlessness I described has its roots in looking around and going, all these people are making themselves miserable in relationships. Why would I want to do that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And often a common reaction to that is to avoid relationships.
Absolutely.
In men and women.
Absolutely. I did that for sure.
Yeah. And so it's that vulnerability, it's so powerful,
Mm.
but also too like, and it just I don't know why this isn't seen, but if if you know someone who's unhappy in a relationship,
Mm.
they're miserable
Mm.
at home, in their friendships, because all
Mm.
they'll do is complain,
Mhm.
and at work.
Mhm.
It's almost not impossible, but it's really hard to have a great day
Yes.
when you're miserable in your relationship.
Yeah.
So the quality of our relationship impacts every area of our life,
Absolutely.
every aspect of our day.
Mm.
Yet so few people are willing to invest in that.
Yeah.
They'll invest in their accounting course or their advanced course in whatever their career or purpose is,
Yeah.
but they don't do it for love or intimacy
Mhm.
until there's a problem.
Mhm.
And treating, people like us or
Mhm.
counselors, therapists as somewhere to go when the relationship's broken and needs fixing.
Yes.
Whereas really, we're the place you go when you want to create a thriving relationship.
Absolutely.
Get to people like us before you break your
Mm.
relationship.
Yes.
And I mean anyone, whether it's a
Mm.
counselor or a therapist,
Mhm.
practitioner. And so like it's so hard to it's so obvious. Like when I say it, it's like, oh yeah, it's so obvious. Yet people don't seem to register it, or they don't know what to do about it, or it's just doesn't land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, that sense that there are real understanding, skills, tools that people can learn and embody. There are ways that people can change their lives, change their relationships.
Absolutely.
That are simple, that are effective, that are long lasting. But it's just that the information is not. It's not going to be found on the everyday news or social media sources.
It's not mainstream.
It's like it needs to be found with people who have expertise in that area.
Yeah. I think one of the key things too is you have to be willing to live differently to how you're living now. Because if you want to maintain your life as it is, then your relationship will maintain as it is.
Yeah.
To become a completely different person if you want to change.
Yeah.
That's true for change across the board.
Absolutely. And each person needs to be willing to change themselves, not be focused on changing their partner.
Yeah. And that's usually the hardest obstacle, because almost everybody can find fault with their partner. I know you can't. Sorry. But for other people.
You're such a Leo some days.
I just thought I'd allow myself a moment of indulgence. So it's so easy to see what our partners are doing and how wrong it is. And usually that'll be true to a large extent. And what are we doing?
Yes.
What can't we see?
Yes.
Because it's so hard. And this is the tricky bit. How do you be aware of something you're not aware of? Because if you're already not aware of it, someone says, you're doing this, and it's instantly in that person's body, it's like, that's not true, because that's not their experience.
Yes.
So it's like, how do we open up that curiosity and become available for new information, to be curious about how we're impacting others, to actually look at then our own behavior and how we can make an adjustment or a change that will allow the relationship to thrive.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Very, very tricky area. It can take years to unravel some of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
I can feel it. You want to talk about the purpose-driven heart.
Feels like time. And I might introduce it by sharing about the meme that I shared with you this morning. I saw this meme the other day, man and woman lying in bed, both on their own side of the bed, like not touching, no connection. And there's a speech bubble or a thought bubble above both their heads. The one above the woman's head is like, oh, maybe he's falling out of love with me. Maybe, I wonder what I've done. Oh, he's been so distracted. I'm sure he doesn't want to be with me anymore. He must be planning to leave me. Like, I wonder what's going on. I wonder if there's anything I can do to change it for him. And then the thought bubble above the man's head is like, I wonder what's wrong with my boat. I've tried everything to fix it today and it's just not working.
I've lived this moment.
Take
Sure,
it
it's
away.
a meme and not a moment of my life.
Okay, over to you.
Yeah, I've lived that moment many times in my life, not just with boats, often with motorbikes. Yeah. So, like for me, well, I start with the purpose driven because I was always love driven. It's a form. I'll start with purpose driven
Yeah.
and then go to that.
Yeah, sure.
So we don't plan these, just so you know. Martini gives me a topic in the morning. So I just say whatever comes up. So the purpose driven heart, or particularly a masculine man, alpha man's heart, is very different, and it's purpose driven. So when I say that, there's always a sense for him of where am I going? What am I doing? What's the purpose of this? What's the point? You'll notice that men will quite often say, what's the point of this? What's the point of this conversation? What's the point of connecting? What's the point of going and seeing those friends? Like, it's there's always this sense of like, what's the point? Because for him, there's a real sense of the meaning of life has something to do with where he's going or what he's creating, where he wants to go, what he wants to do, who he's becoming is more important and more valuable in his experience than connecting, than love connection. It's not that he doesn't want love or connection. And as we said at the beginning, all human beings, regardless of gender orientation or whatever, will have both of these active in the body. And so, like, and we can even see, like, as kids, like the love driven part playing out and calling for that sense of purpose from a man from a really young age. Like, I remember being in primary school and, I had a girlfriend. We didn't even kiss, but I still had a girlfriend. But there was this sense of like, what are we doing on the weekend? Where are we going? Are we doing something? Are we boyfriend and girlfriend? Wanting to know where we were going, what's happening, where are you taking me? And there is a real sense, in the feminine love connection part of like, where is this man going? And so it's important to both partners, is what I'm trying to point out. So that purpose driven part of a man can often be shut down to love. You'll notice that like really successful business people can be really quite cold, particularly on their way to becoming successful. Not so much when they're successful. And I hear professional athletes speak to it a lot. So like I remember we watched something with Callie Slater recently, a podcast, and he was talking about how cold and savage he was as a competitor. He's not like that now. He can be if he chooses to be, but he's often not. It's not a habit. But it's interesting to notice that when there's a sense for a man of where am I going in the world, it's like that becomes such a sharp, clear focus that it begins to exclude everything else. And in that exclusion, it can create such really strong division, especially in a relationship for a love-driven being. So this is sort of the fork in the road where partners, they call it growing apart, but it's really, they can start, the gap between the two people can get wide. And so having a purpose-driven heart, like for me, means that, where am I going in the world? What am I creating? Who am I being? Who am I becoming? All these types of questions are really profound. They're really important. The love connection piece to a really masculine man, I'm going to try and explain this, but this could come out really awkward. If I'm in mission mode and I'm right on purpose and I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, I can guarantee you Martina will walk in the room and she'll want to connect. So there's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with her desire. But for a purpose-driven man, how I experience that is as an irritation. It's like I'm doing something, I'm going somewhere. Someone comes in and wants to pull my attention. So that purpose-driven part is very single-focused, one thing at a time. It's really common in men to be is they can only do one thing at a time, and whereas women can multitask, which is true. Actually, scientists years ago discovered a pathway in the right side of the brain. When women multitask, it lights up. Men don't even have the pathway.
Interesting, because I think it even, this is part that does go beyond masculine and feminine. It goes to man and woman, and even at the level of our DNA. Like if we're in hunter gatherer society and you're a hunter, you can only focus on one thing at a time as a hunter.
Yeah, don't get killed by the tiger.
Yeah. Whereas as a gatherer, it's like, oh, there's berries and there's nuts and there's the children and there's the grasses I want to, pick for weaving. And so as a gatherer, it's like, yes, there's all these things, wide attention. Yeah.
Guarantee you, I will not be able to find something in the house, even if it's right in front of me. Martina will see it, but that's part of that wide gatherer vision. If it moves, I will see it.
Yes.
Like if we're out walking and I see a lizard or a snake or a bird or something move, it's like phew, my attention's right on it immediately. That's that purpose hunter driven aspect and the gatherer aspect that you just pointed out there. So if you're having that challenge in your relationship at home, that's just how it is. And accepting that rather than fixing it is the point of it.
I have a cheeky suggestion for fridge manufacturers. If men are ever going to find anything in the fridge, we need a fridge where things are moving.
Like a little carousel.
Yeah, then you'd see it because it's in movement.
Yeah. 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 I don't know how many times I've looked for stuff in the fridge that's there and never found it. I don't even know why I go to the fridge.
Okay, so back to purpose.
Yeah, so when I'm in that mission mode, that focused clarity, one direction pointing that I'm going, that also feels like I'm further away from you. So that naturally will create an irritation in the Amiga heart. So it's like, oh, where's love going? Does he not like the meme? It's like, where is he? So that purpose pulls so deeply at the core of my being that when it's absent, I'll feel lost, helpless, worthless, powerless, like no direction, don't know where I'm going, aimless. In those moments, I'll even start to hate on myself. Like, why don't you know where you're going? Why don't you know what you want to do? Like this is not okay. Like all these sorts of internal dialogue wants to, spew out. But the absence of purpose feels like pain. If there's no deep meaning to what I'm doing, then I just don't want to do it. It's just, and when I say I don't want to do it, it irritates and it hurts. Like it's painful. The same as like the absence of love connection when your partner is not available for love hurts in a woman's heart. For me, as a man, in my heart, when purpose is absent, it feels painful, like to do whatever I'm doing. Such a deep, irritating, it's kind of foul. I don't even know how to fully touch how it feels in my body when that sense of purpose is absent. And so how that comes out though, and like what we're sharing in the moment, sounds like men and women move further apart, which is what you see in our culture. And there's a turning point where they come back together. But is there anything you want to share or say about the purpose aspect?
Yeah.
It's pretty simple, and I'm not really sure what else to add.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to tease out.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, because purpose can be many different things. So say, for example, if we look back to when you're a hairdresser, you're kind of like, you're a hairdresser, you had your salon, you knew what you were doing, you knew how you were making money. So in a certain sense, your purpose was locked and loaded. However, I feel like you had purpose in a number of different ways during those years.
Yeah. Like with the hairdressing aspect, the purpose, like externally, functionally in society, it was making money. But that wasn't the purpose of being a hairdresser. The thing that I loved about hairdressing was making women feel beautiful. Does that make sense? Like that was the most important thing.
Yes.
In that. And then next in line, and that I include, like I did enjoy men don't want to look beautiful. They come in and like, they want to be out within 10 minutes. No, I don't want to wash. No, I don't want to dry. Just cut it so I can go and get back on my mission. They don't want to sit there and feel good. They want to go. So like I love doing men's hair, but I loved honoring their sense of purpose. It's like, yeah, I will knock this bad boy out in 10 minutes and you will look awesome. And I'll still charge you full price because I'm a good bloke. But so the deeper purpose for me there, the second part was that how much I loved talking about relationships and connecting with people in that way. So I was very love driven in that aspect. But purpose doesn't have to have anything to do with our career at all. And so, you know, at some point because I was a hairdresser for 30 years and I had my own business for 23. Somewhere towards the end of that though, I felt the sense of purpose drop away. And so one of the things with purpose is it's not stagnant. It doesn't, it keeps revealing itself. And the most common analogy that I hear is that it's like an onion. You just keep peeling away layers. And the way to recognize when a layer of purpose is falling away is it starts to become meaningless.
Yes.
And so hairdressing wasn't meaningless. I still found the value in it. And there was an irritation as that there's something deeper that I have to give. There's something more important now for me to do. And that started to come online. And that's how we can recognize when a layer of purpose is beginning to fall away, is the irritation starts to arise.
Yes.
And so purpose doesn't have to do with a career, doesn't have to have anything to do with money. And so I started studying in like the first thing I went back to was spiritual healing, which I'd done when I was younger. And I was good at that and I loved that, but it wasn't it. And I still enjoy it now. It's a part of my work, but I don't do it in the practical hands-on sense, like a body work session that I used to. I can, but I don't. So I went back to that and that wasn't it. And then what was really clear it was intimacy and relationship was just, I was so passionate about that. Like it was right up there with motorbikes. And anyone who knows me knows that's a big statement. And so I started to look towards that. And so then the career as a hairdresser became more valuable as I indulged in the purpose. Not indulged, but I created more space for that in my life. I was going to retreats, I was studying, I was going overseas to events with teachers and spiritual teachers and training and learning in the art of how do you awaken spiritually through intimate relating. And so that was so profound for me. Like I didn't even know it was a thing. But when I felt it and I heard about it and I studied it and I practiced it, my heart would sing.
Yes.
And so I knew that I had something to do with that. And I had this burning desire within me to just dive into it, to deeply understand and embody, this gift that I'd found. And so eventually there was people asking me to facilitate, teach, hold space, coach, whatever, all those things, which I really didn't want to do because I just enjoyed studying it. Like I loved it so much that I was just happy just to be a student forever. And really that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Is being a student. So yeah, so purpose, it moves and it shifts and it changes. It's not fixed, it's not rigid. And this can be really confusing to men. It's not a goal. It's the actual, and it's not a destination. We can't get to it. We have to allow it to be revealed and it moves through us rather than we move towards it. It's very, very different. But when I could start to open my body and allow how much I loved and enjoyed intimacy and relationships to come online, I could allow that to be revealed through my experience that, wow, this is the next layer of purpose for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And any time I pushed and strived and chased towards doing something, I completely ruined it.
Yeah.
Go on, I can feel you want to ask me something.
Yeah.
Or say something.
There's just coming back to this purpose being more than your career. I want to ask a question about where the if we go back to the meme, it was the boat. In your case, sometimes it's a boat, sometimes it's a motorbike, sometimes it's a car. Where do they sit in the context of purpose? Because they are so important to men. Is that relevant to this conversation or not? The boat, the bike, the car.
In some ways, yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're incredibly valuable, and they can be, but it's what they represent. And quite often what they represent is the living experience of freedom. So it's the breaking free of a constraint. So say for me, motorbikes, it's like I would work all week and I'd work hard and I would study in the evenings. But then on the weekend, when it came time to spend time with my son or with my friends, I would want to go out on that motorbike. And it was just this sense of breaking free of that grind or that intensity of life. But there's also the camaraderie with friends. So I would ride road bikes or dirt bikes, but say for the dirt bikes, there's a group of men going out into the bush or the forest. If you're from another country, we call it the bush. Going out into the forest and then challenging ourselves. And then like we would put ourselves in ridiculous situations. Well, I remember being stuck on the side of a hill for 8 hours and we weren't even sure if we were going to get out. So it was so good. I missed that day. And so, but that the purpose-driven heart, like a man, part of the way we grow is through competition and challenge. You notice that the competition's a really masculine space, not dominated by men, but it's a masculine thing to do because the purpose-driven heart will grow through competition and challenge. So challenging myself, putting myself in these difficult situations. And also there was the part of me, like I'd been a hairdresser all week. I needed to do something really manly just to feel whole. Does that make sense? Because I wasn't your typical hairdresser. I was a little bit, I don't know, butch, normal, masculine, I don't know, whatever you call it. But I wasn't, average hairdresser. So I needed that part of me stimulated. So I would go out into the bush and stretch and challenge myself. But there's also a real camaraderie. Like you have to work together. So like if you don't work together, no one's getting out. You know, it's okay to sit up the top of the hill and laugh at your mates that can't get up. But after an hour, you got to go and give them a hand.
An hour? We better be down there in 30 seconds.
Nah. The bloke gets stuck in the bush on a motorbike. The very first thing that happens is he gets filmed and ridiculed and laughed at. And it's awesome. Then when he's completely destroyed and he's broken, then you go and give him a hand. And he'll love that. But he'll grow because of the pain of not being able to overcome that challenge. Hurts so much that he'll want to do something different and overcome it. And that's how the masculine or the alpha part of a human grows, through competition and challenge. And if there's too much competition and challenge, life gets really dry, gets really empty and barren and feels purposeless. And this is where the roads start to move back towards each other. And like anyone who's really, like man or woman, who's really successful in business but spends too much time in that space, there's a coldness and a hardness that starts to come online in those people. And that's the absence of love connection, love flow. There's no joy, there's no nourishment, there's no sustenance, there's none of the benefits of that beautiful feminine quality being present in their life. And you can literally watch people wither.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's super noticeable in women
Mm-hmm.
because it's common to accept that men get hard, especially as they're older, that old
Yes.
men are grumpy old men.
Yeah.
It's because
Yeah.
life's become so barren and so dry.
Mm.
And so it's in the extremes, it's really obvious.
Yeah.
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 And so that's where we need to understand this external dynamic we call relationship is also an internal dynamic. And the
Mm.
external is nothing more than a representation of our own internal dynamic, our own internal relationship between that masculine or alpha, that omega or feminine part of us internally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have you might be able to see if you're watching, we have Panna on screen at the moment. She's very much a love driven being. She's like, where are you? She's crying. She wants love. She wants attention. She wants connection.
Yep. The other one will be by himself somewhere celebrating because she's not harassing him.
But yeah, I know for me, it's part of what, when I was 27, kind of drove that impetus towards doing personal work and beginning to study and train, was because I reached a point where I felt so unhappy, so miserable, so dry, barren, brittle. And that feeling that something inside of me was dying was what drove me towards doing this sort of work.
Yeah, because at some point, there's no amount of money, success, freedom,
Mm-hmm.
toys, or indulgence that you can do that will ever actually touch that part of us that craves love.
Yeah.
Where we need both.
Mm.
And it's at that point that people will often break and then they'll look towards relationship.
Mm.
But the more skillful way is to learn how to do this in a balanced way along the way so that people can thrive in both domains and not have to suffer in one to value the other.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think the very first step is even just this understanding that oftentimes men and women have differences around how they want to live and where they're prioritizing their energy and their time. But the differences doesn't mean that you can't still have a loving, intimate, beautiful relationship. The differences, they just need to be understood.
Yeah, they don't need to be fixed or changed.
Yeah.
Like, say, like if I'm sitting there doing nothing, which I love, and Martina walks in the room, that irritation arises because I can feel the pull from her that she wants something. She wants to connect in some way. The irritation will rise in my body. If I believe that I have to fix that, or that means I don't love her, or that it's, I have to do something so that goes, I'm screwed because it's never going to go. But once I accept that, that's how it feels when she wants to connect, and then I turn towards her and connect, she immediately relaxes. And then she'll come, she'll go, and I'll go back to what I'm doing. So the understanding and the acceptance, it allows us to, it's the very, very beginning of learning to love the differences. And this is probably the key piece of this conversation, is that I've come to recognize that she's a very love-driven being. And if I love that part of her and I learn how to love her, and I had to learn because naturally it's an irritation, right? So learning to love that part of her and seeing the value that it brings to my life and the nourishment that it brings to my life and how much better my life is because of her and that desire, then I can really value that. I can love that part of her. And it's the same in return. If she can love that part of me that, is single focused and can only do one thing at a time, that's purpose driven and is naturally irritated by connection and wants to go and do whatever it is that I'm doing, that mission. If she loves that part of me, it also opens up the pathway for me to turn back towards her. And it's just, both ways. We open up. So rather than notice the differences and go, oh, we're different, love the differences and place equal value on both aspects. The sense of purpose in my body is equally as important as the sense of love connection in hers. And when we can honor both of those things, that's when our relationship really began to thrive.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think a lot of women will be aware of is a man's need for space. And so that need for space through a love-driven filter, it's like, oh, he needs space. Maybe he doesn't love me. He doesn't want to be with me. Like there's the love-driven filter can see a man's need for space as a problem. As soon as
threat.
threat.
To love.
As soon as I realized Rod's need for space has zero to do with me. His need for space is his need for space. It's no reflection of his love for me. Once I got that and then started to support him in having space, I was amazed by his need for space actually became less. I would say he has less space now than when the first couple of years we were together. But I'm also much more encouraging of him to take space. So it's almost like he gets nourished by that space and then he's like back to connect.
Yeah. Yeah. The space doesn't have anything. I don't need space from you. I need space from the intensity of my emotional experience. And so the space allows me to actually feel it and be with it. What is not commonly recognized is the sensitivity of men's hearts. And so, because there's no space for men's feelings as we're growing up, or very little, I know there's talk about it at the moment, but there's no real skillful understanding of how to apply and create space for man's feelings because it is different. Without that, I need space to actually go and try and feel all that because it's so intense. It's so much. I can't be with the intensity of the feelings in my body and be having more data coming in. Like the cup's full. So then at some point, the cup just doesn't just spill over, it breaks.
Yeah.
So often the need for space is just nothing more than the intense feelings in their body and the amount of information that can be coming forward. Like a woman's feelings are so big, or can be, and for a man it feels like being consumed. It's like I'm going to lose something, I'm going to die. It's like, oh my god, I don't know what's happening right now. There's so much happening. And so the need for space is often the need to process the experience.
Yeah. And sometimes even I notice with you, sometimes it is that pure nothingness. Like even if there's been no emotional upset, that you just need some nothing type space.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's important to be intentional with the nothing space, not fill it with music or YouTube or social media or TV or whatever, because the man will come back feeling overstimulated still. He'll be full.
Yeah.
Because it's more coming in. But then, most, average people, if they sit still and silent, they're so uncomfortable with what comes up.
Yes.
So this is why it's such a tricky balance. Like we have to be taught how to feel our feelings and how to be with them, which isn't taught, and we won't dive down that rabbit hole now. But if we don't know how, and we can't be with the intensity of those feelings, then even in the space we'll seek to avoid those, and it just makes everything worse. But it's only because I know how to be with the feelings and how to be in nothingness that I desire to come back to connection.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm not sure, and actually I'll ask you a question about it because you probably felt this in your earlier stages of life, particularly around when your son was born. And that is that as someone who's purpose driven, that then having a son to provide for, did you feel your purpose get heightened because then there's like somebody whose well-being you're responsible for?
Yeah, it does get heightened. It changes more than anything.
Yeah.
It becomes less self-centered, less selfish, because now there's this being, that I'm responsible for, and for bringing up, and to teach how to be in the world.
Yes.
And yeah, it changes the orientation of it. Yeah, it gets in some ways wider and deeper.
Yeah, because I noticed that some men actually do become more successful when they have a family to provide for. It's almost like there's greater inspiration for what it is they're creating in the world because they want to be able to provide the best life possible for their family.
Absolutely. And it's an interesting one because the impulse to provide is in me really strong. And so my response, or let's call it reaction to that, was to work really hard, but then end up spending much less time with the family. And it's wanting to provide a good life, but that, working all the time dries us out. So then I start to feel resentful. So then the very thing that I love and I'm working for, I start to resent. Creates an incredible paradox of I'm so driven to love and support these people, and God, they give me the shits because it's so irritating because I feel trapped. So I have to do this thing now. So it opens up a huge can of worms. It's beautiful. It's a great inquiry. And it's a really rich and deep opening and awakening that can happen through that experience. But it's very confronting because it brings online all those things, and I didn't know they were there.
Yeah. And so, and this might be a whole other topic, but do you feel that sits underneath the desire of some men to escape because of that pressure
Absolutely.
around?
Yeah. And it's the pressure. It feels like pressure, like pressure on the body. That pressure feels for a man like being trapped, and that pressure he'll want to escape from. So that will drive that desire. He'll need to get away from his woman, away from his children, away from work. He'll want to be away. That's the feeling. But what's really happening is that he wants to be free of the pressure.
Yes.
Not that he wants to escape them, but he doesn't have the skill to manage I didn't have the skill to manage my life in a way that could relieve that pressure. In fact, everything I did increased it until it blew up. And maybe that was how it was meant to be. But there is a way to skillfully navigate and manage life so that we don't create that pressure. And I worked on that as a hairdresser, and how I worked on it is I adjusted my working hours. I adjusted my life, my leisure time off, space alone, relationship, son, all these things together.
Yes.
So that I didn't feel that pressure. There was a sense of balance. And the way I measured it was like my need for a holiday. If I had this burning need, I need to get out of here. I knew the balance was wrong.
Yes.
Whereas it was like, got to that sort of time of year where I normally have a holiday. It's like, I could have one or not have one. I was like, okay, I've balanced this well, and I'm going to have the holiday. But then I could have it and enjoy it for what it was rather than need it because I wasn't skillfully managing the rest of my life. Yeah. And so purpose is a really beautiful thing, and it can create a whole trap to fall down. It can create more and more pressure. Now, we're right at time.
Okay, perfect.
I've actually got a client session in 7 minutes.
Wow. I did not realize it was that time. But
we didn't talk about, and I think we'll do another podcast on this.
Yes.
About how it plays out in the reciprocal. So I mentioned a couple of times I was very love-driven and connection-driven.
Yes.
That aspect of me, so one of both, having both, but also how we create layers of protection through these things and how that plays out in life and how it impacts life. I think that would be a valuable exploration as a second follow-on to this.
Beautiful. Let's do a follow-up. I feel like there's, some other ways that men and women can understand and support each other that we can bring into part 2.
Yeah, only because we mentioned it.
Yes.
We haven't followed up on it.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Okay. Well, I did not realize how late it was. The time has flown. Thank you to people for listening and watching.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next time.